So what we found in our investigation is that of the schools that we looked at, about a dozen, most of them the largest districts in the state, superintendents are making around that 230 to $250,000 range in
Hmm.
contracts. There was one outlier who has the potential to make $491,000 this year. Wanted to talk to you about superintendent contracts, how school boards come up with these figures and performance-based pay, and what are your thoughts on that?
I think they're overpaid. And I served for 24 years on a school board. And my philosophy was not to go out, do a national search and try to bring in someone on the white horse that you have to pay a lot of money to, but to promote from within. If you promote from within, then they're happy to get a raise and you don't have to pay them outlandish salaries. So, we're right next to, this is the Paradise Valley School District, which at that time was the third largest in the state. We were right next to Scottsdale. We were a lot larger than Scottsdale, but they paid much more for their superintendents than we did because they would do these national searches and have to pay a lot to bring somebody in, whereas we always promoted from within, and that's much more economical. And you know the 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 positives and the negatives about the person. When you bring someone in from the outside, you're always going to be surprised with negatives that you didn't think of or nobody warned you of.
So let's talk about performance-based pay. With
Hmm.
this one superintendent, he is able to make 72,000 a year just in performance-based pay. There
Hmm.
was another one I think we found at 22,000. And then last year there was a big brouhaha out here in the West Valley with a superintendent who is eligible to make an extra 17,000. This is a 15-year-old law that we found. What are your opinions on performance-based pay for superintendents?
Well, it depends on what their base pay is. If their base pay is excessive, then it's not a good idea. If the base pay is set at a level that recognizes that he can make this extra money for performance, I think that's okay.
What do you think about teacher pay? Arizona always, every year it's Arizona's at the bottom, Arizona is last in teacher
Mhm.
pay.
Yeah,
Do you find that there's a discrepancy here between teacher pay and superintendent pay?
unbelievable, unbelievable. And again, in my district, we always gave every category the same percentage. The classified, the teachers, and the administrators all got the same percentage of raises. But having a big gap between the teachers and the superintendent, I think is unconscionable. And in my state of education speeches to the legislature, I've been saying we must increase our teacher pay. The way to do that is through Proposition 123. We get the money from the state land trust, but we have to because we're losing more teachers from the profession that are coming into the classroom. So if we don't take strong action, we could end up with zero teachers. You can imagine how the public would react to that.
What I have found that a lot of times negotiations on these contracts, not all of the time, but a lot of the time, discussions take place in executive sessions. And sometimes it's difficult to find these contracts. There are districts, Tucson Unified contacted me this morning and said, look, our contracts are easily available on our website, but many times they're not. Should they be? And should the public have more transparency and access to these contracts?
Yeah, they should. The discussion can occur in executive session, but then when they sign the contract, they do that in an open meeting. So that by law has to be open and available to the public. And if somebody has trouble getting them, they can do a records request, and then the district is required by law to respond to it.
Any other thoughts on this topic of superintendent pay?
Yeah, we did a study that showed that the more money that goes into the classroom for teacher pay, and the less it goes into administration, the better the schools do academically. And the more for administration and the less for teachers, the worse the schools do academically. We sent out a press release. Nobody picked up on it. The press just wasn't interested in it. But I think it's very telling.
Well, I'll take it. If you have it, I'll take it. So I thought what was really kind of interesting, you are the lowest paid state superintendent in the country.
That's correct. Yeah.
And what do you make?
I make 85,000.
Wow, what do you think of that?
Well, I couldn't do it if I already hadn't made money as a lawyer and invested it well. I couldn't do it if I were just, if this was my job and it was my sole source of income, it wouldn't be possible. But I do have an independent income, so I'm able to do it. And now I give up a lot of money. If I just stayed in the law practice and not done public service, I just told my oldest daughter I'd be making million. I would have had millions of dollars more. But this gives me satisfaction, and we only have one life, and we have to do what satisfies us.
Do you enjoy being a superintendent?
Very much. It's very meaningful. Problems in the schools are huge, and I need to work to try to solve them. And when I was superintendent from 2003 to 2011, and I was attorney general. Then I went back to the private practice of law, and then I announced in 2022 I was going to run for superintendent again. And my friends all came to me and said, "Tom, you're crazy. You make multiples more money as a lawyer, and you were attorney general. You're going backwards." And I said, "No, the big problems in our schools, and I absolutely have to work on that." So that's what I've been doing.